everyone. Welcome to Serendipity Sunday. Excuse the typo there, but we are in this morning's session. We come together every Sunday at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. I'm your facilitator, also known as a SAR. I am a spiritual scientist, a neuroplastician, and I'll go into that a little later. If you're joining us by Zoom this morning, don't forget to use those features. The chat live is open. You can also raise your hand. I can see your hand if you have a question. So that's important to me. Additionally, this morning, if you are joining us by YouTube, Oasis Spiritual Center YouTube channel, we welcome you. Make sure you hit that like and that subscribe button, so that way you'll be notified in the future when we are going live. The website is www.oasisspiritualcenter.com. Okay, this morning, before we get started, I always like to put the ask out there. We don't ask because we have a need, but we ask for two reasons. One, to give you the opportunity to be part of what we're doing and to operate inside of the spiritual law of circulation. So if you want to be a blessing to this ministry, there's 3 different ways you can do that. It starts by going to the website, www.oasisspiritualcenter.com, and there you'll find 3 ways in which you can give. You can give by text to give, Cash App, PayPal. So if you are considering sowing into this ministry, that's how you do it. I'll circle back and share that towards the end. This morning, we're dealing with neuroplasticity and positive thinking, but I want to focus on the topic this morning: don't be guilty of toxic positive thinking. Not only one who peddles positive thinking, but be one who is sensitive to the issues that come with always pushing a positive thinking agenda. So we want to explore that on this morning. So I started this morning with a little song that many of us are familiar with from the 70s, Don't Worry, Be Happy. I think it was Bobby McFarlane, but it's a great pop. It was a great pop song, and a lot of times people was wearing T-shirts that had the smiley face on it, and it said, "Don't worry, be happy." That was cool. I remember that's probably when I really got started in being introduced to positive psychology or positive thinking. I was probably around the age of 12 or so when that song came out. So it's a good song. It's a pop song, but it can have some shaming effects, some negative fallout. And I don't think it really takes into consideration sometimes in our lives, we have situations, we have circumstances where it is virtually impossible to be happy. So I have to walk a happy medium because I'm for the most part, I'm a very positive person. Always got something positive to say, but I always got to be sensitive also that when I'm engaging people, they may not be in a place where they're ready to get a positive affirmation, or they're ready to have something said that moves them from the place of where they are. And we want to look at that today, this morning. I'm going to spend, a brief moment kind of covering this, introducing you to some things. And then we're going to do the deeper dive this Monday for sure on this topic, because I think this is such a key instrumental topic that people got to get wrap their minds around it. They got to get a hold of it, because sometimes some of the worst people you could run into is well-intended people that's always seeking to shift your attitude or get you into a happy state or a happy place, where there's some dangers in that, because it can become a very toxic thing. So this morning, I want to cover 2 things. I want to cover neuroplasticity, not deeply cover it, but introduce you to it. I want to introduce you to this topic of toxic positivity. I'm so positive that I even have a positive Bible. I oftentimes read this Bible. It's the Norman Vincent Peale experience with the Bible. So Norman Vincent Peale had reworked his he's the father, or we will call him the father of positive thinking. Here's the Bible of positive thinking. I have that up there on the screen, and I'll put it up a little later. The Power of Positive Thinking. The Amazing Results of Positive Thinking. Over 5 million copies of this book were sold. I've had it for quite a long time. So this is one of the books I use or I read frequently. I oftentimes will read scripture through traditional Bible, and then I'll look at it inside of the Positive Thinking Bible that I have. And it just gives me another perspective. So on the screen there, you see two emojis. You see one with a sad face and one with a smiley face. And you see that man drawing that yellow arrow too, as if we all should be moving to that state, and that should be the state that we are in. Now, the Bible tells us that in whatever state we're in, we need to be content. And so that even tells me that when you're sad, initially sad, when you're experiencing an emotion, you got to learn to be content in that thing for at least a moment. Sometimes we don't want to feel uncomfortable. We don't want to deal with the situation, and we are rushing to get out of. We rush through grief. We rush just through separations, divorces. We rush through failures or failing moments. When we need to slow it down, because I believe that all things do work together for the good. And that means when you're going through something that is uncomfortable, don't be so quick to get out of it. When you're dealing with something, be present to what is it I'm dealing with? Where did it come from? What is the lesson in it? What is the message of it? Is it for me or is it for someone else? You know, and sometimes things we go through give us the opportunity to grow through them. And what that means that sometimes things are going well for you, and let's say you have a situation where you have a financial loss and you have to start all over. Are you able to implement the things you've learned since you were in your wealthy place and see if they work? So, and I want to tell you, the things I share with you, they work if you work them. Yes, that is something I want you to know. So we're going to start off this morning by defining neuroplasticity. Let me put up here on my screen the Q&A so I can see that. Let me see if I'm not seeing my Q&A screen up here. So I know it's probably because I have it in the backdrop of my screen this morning, but I'll get that up there. So we want to start by defining neuroplasticity, plasticity, like plastic, plasticity, like plastic before it hardens has a plasticity to it. It has the ability to mold it. But once it's hardened, then you have what you have. And neuro has to do with the thinking process in our minds, not in our brains. So we want to look at a definition of that this morning so we can all begin to work from the same space. Sometimes we have these definitions in our mind that are not necessarily the acceptable or intended definition. So we want to look at that. So when we talk about neuroplasticity is defined as the ability of the nervous system to change its activity in response to intrinsic or things going on inside, or extrinsic stimuli, things that happen around you, by reorganizing its structure, functions, or connections after injuries such as stroke or traumatic brain injuries or trauma. If you are in a trauma situation that is always bringing fear, your brain is hardwired to be on the lookout. And so if your brain is hardwired to be on the lookout, then it affects your entire chemistry, and that could result in you having certain diseases manifesting in your body. So if you're under a lot of stress, then you have certain diseases manifesting in your body. So one of the things we have to keep in mind is a lot of what we call disease is a direct result of our body showing us the result of something, what has happened to us. Sometimes we don't look at what has happened, what was the catalyst to that thing manifesting in your body, overly stressing about something, thinking about something, having dealt with a trauma that you still are dealing with it in an intrinsic way, even though the extrinsic situation has moved on, yet it's going on the inside. And if it's going on the inside, your brain don't really have a way of knowing that it's not going on, because you have all the feelings that are associated with it. So we have to learn to not just label ourselves. And so, even if you're going through something, let's say you have a situation that has happened in your life and you've been diagnosed as a depressive. I have a hard time dealing with diagnoses because they're labels. And then what happens is, if you keep saying, I am a manic depressive, I am a depressive, or I am suicidal, all those things, you're now wiring yourself for this. As a man thinks, so is he. So when we talk about positive thinking, sometimes we just make it really light, but we have never delved into what actually is positive thinking. And for many of us who are in New Thought types ministries or word churches or even Christians, is framed from the perspective of something that helps you move through life and not deal with or have to deal with or either succumb to life challenges. But that's not, you can't control what's gonna happen to you in most cases, but you can control how you respond to something. But many of us, because of our neuroplasticity and because of we have become hardwired, we react. And see, when you respond, that says, I have choices. But many of us think we are hardwired. We are hardwired because of the way we think. We are hardwired because of our BS. Yes, our BS. BS means belief systems, the things we believe, the system of our belief wires our brains. And so when we talk about taking on new beliefs, it's something we have to learn that whenever you have a new belief, it's going to have to contend with the giant of the old belief. And when it's contending with the giant of the old belief, you have to understand how to dismantle that giant. It takes about 63 days to really shift a belief system, not just saying having affirmations or positive statements or statements of what you are, but there's a lot of other things we have to do. And I'm gonna unpack that, or begin to unpack that on this coming Monday. And the reason why I'm doing this, because I believe people are really looking for a way to master this thing called life. And so many of us are being mastered because of our hardwiring. So, and some people believe, well, this is just my makeup. This is how I am. But neuroplasticity says that we have the ability to rewire ourselves. So neuroplasticity is defined as the ability of the nervous system, which is made up inside the brain, to change its activity. So you can change the activity in response to intrinsic or extrinsic stimuli by reorganizing its structure. So you got to reorganize it. You got to change the system and the functions and the connections that you have. That's really, they used to think that once you have a set system, it couldn't be changed. Your mental makeup couldn't be changed, but they've come to find that it can be. So we all have a level of hardwired circuitry, and the hardwiring has to do with the culture we grew up in, families of origin, the external things we've had to deal with. So you're wired a certain way. Example, a person can say something to you that don't even know you, and you think they're saying something negative because the wording they use or the expression they use was tied to past experience. So when we talk about hardwiring, we're really talking about our brains. So we got to learn that our brains can be rewired, that there's possibilities that exist in the realm of our mind, but we have to be willing to do the work to change the program inside of the circuitry of your brain. So we want to begin to look at that. When we talk about neuroplasticity, it's the ability to hold thoughts or to run programs that rewire the synapses. If you're looking at on the screen here, you see this is brain activity. This is what goes on in the brain, the electrons. So you see the electrical activity that goes on, and these trees, they get set. If they continue to fire, you keep thinking the same way, things fire the same way, and they become a pattern. A neural pattern is established. So this can be a very technical conversation. So I'm trying to bring it down to a layman's presentation. But you want to be successful, you got to understand who you are and your makeup. You got to understand that you have the ability to rewire, to recreate, and to create the world you desire. So jumping right into what I really wanted to focus on this morning has to do with toxic positivity. When we talk about toxic positivity, take a moment and define it. Examples of toxic or positivity is somebody telling you, be worried, think positive, just be positive, or, change your vibrational frequency. You hear me saying these things. And if you are not really tracking with me in the entire conversation, you may think that that's all I do is tell you, just think positive, or raise your vibrational frequency, work on your chakras, all these things that we do, the physical things. But until we begin to look at our thinking process, to look at how we have been wired, you can't go from a negative Nancy to a positive Peter overnight. You can maybe be positive in the situation, but who you are ultimately comes through because you are wired a certain way. Sometimes the scripture tells us that, happiness is our birthright. So we have all these things. And if you're not being happy, if you're not being positive, then it can result in you having a level of shame or feeling a sense of failure. So when I talk about toxic positivity, as we move in deeper into this conversation, the best place to start is with the definition. Such as, you see this woman here, look like she's a battered woman. She's has 2 black eyes, so she's been in a terrible situation, or maybe she's in an accident. It depends how you look at it. Maybe it was in a car accident, and so she has 2 black eyes, or maybe she's in a domestic violence situation. But the issue is this smiley face. What is toxic positivity? Toxic positivity is the belief that no matter how dire or difficult a situation is, people should remain or maintain a positive mindset. And many people are guilty of that. The church is guilty of that. We've been taught, when a person is going through, we say things like all things work together. And they do work together, but this may not be the time to tell that person. So timing is everything. While there are benefits of being optimistic and engaging in positive thinking, toxic positivity rejects all difficult emotions in favor of a cheerful and often falsely positive facade. And that's true. So people are tell you, all you got to do is think positive things. All you got to do is have positive affirmation. All you got to do is have an expectancy. All of those things are true, but you got to put them in perspective. Now, inside this conversation of positivity, positive thinking says that you are not a pessimistic person, but you're optimistic. There's a difference between one who is pessimistic and one who is optimistic. I tell the story often of the little boy that had been talking to his father about getting a pony and for Christmas, and that's all he wanted. He wanted a pony. And so on Christmas morning, everybody was sitting around the breakfast table, preparing to go and open gifts. And the little boy asked, "Can I be excused?" And he got up from the table. A couple minutes later, he came back with his boots on. He came back with his winter coat on, his earmuffs, his cap, his gloves, and he dashed out the door. And they were like looking at each other, where is he going? So Pops threw on his gear, Mom threw on his gear, his siblings threw their gear on. They ran out, and by the time they caught up with him, he was in the barn. And he was in the barn. There was this big pile of manure. And he was shoveling the pile of manure, shoveling it. And then his father said, hey, buddy, what's happening? And he says, with all this manure, there must be a pony in here. This is like an example of an optimistic person. An optimistic person is one when crap pile up all around them, they still have the optimistic. So you can be optimistic in the midst of the most terrible situation. You can have a diagnosis, you can have a prognosis, and you can be optimistic. Okay, you don't have to move into pessimism. Most people are pessimistic. But as an optimist, you also got to make space for how you're feeling. Even if you have disappointments, you can have fears, you can have moments of human frailty, and that's okay. You just want to make sure you're surrounded with the people that won't allow you to get stuck and begin to run that frequency. Okay, you run the frequency based on how frequent you think that. So you give people space. Like I give people time to go through grieving. I'm scheduled to do a funeral this week of a young couple who has an 11-month-old baby that recently born. I'm hardwired for positivity, but I didn't go into that conversation with things like all things going to work together, or I asked them how they were feeling. I brought it to the moment. Okay, and even if they said they were feeling good, that they're okay, they're not okay. You're not okay when things happen to you, and at the moment of them happening, you got to regain yourself. Sometimes you're just so accustomed to saying I'm okay, or you're so accustomed to thinking you don't need help. But we all need help at times. We have to be careful that we are not allowing the hard wire of positive thinking to circumvent the opportunity for us to grow inside of whatever we're going through, for others to come alongside. Sometimes, people ask, can I help you in helping you? Say, no, I got it. We got to be open to, you normally have it, but you're in a different situation right now. So that's a good definition of positive thinking. So we live in a world where people are toxic with it. They always say, let's stay positive. Something's going on. And they'll say, you ever had that person say, let's stay positive? Or that person say some, all kind of little crazy things that people will say at the inopportune time. So we got to be careful of that. Usually when they're doing that, it's a mantra that they're hearing more than ever before. What I mean by that, in our lives, when we go through things and we bump up against people, they will have these mantras. But let's be mindful when a person is going through something, don't impose how you feel, how you're going through, because you're not going through that. But try to be present and ask people this, how can I support you in what you're going through? Sometimes don't always show up with a quick fix, with the adage or with the scripture. Sometimes just ask people, how are you doing? And then if they say, I'm doing well, you already know you're not doing well. You just lost a loved one who I know was significant to you. Now, if it's somebody that's been a thorn in their flesh, maybe they are doing okay. Maybe it is time, let's go have a drink and say, this is over. Let us recapitulate all you've gone through. But in the reality, you have to be able to assess, if I was in that situation, would I be okay? I don't care how positive you are. If there's somebody who's near and dear to you going through, you have the tendency to run that same vibration. And so you might not stay in it, but you can, because it's called compassion. You have a level of compassion because you can feel what that is, you maybe never experienced, or maybe you've experienced it. So we got to make space for positivity to show up in the right time, in the right way. So when we talk about toxic positivity, as I've been sharing with you, it's inappropriate statements. And what makes it inappropriate to say, you will get through. People don't need to hear that because they don't need to get through. They need to be present to. They're not at the place of getting through. So part of grieving is allowing people to be where they are. Okay, and each person is different. Some may need to be there longer than others. But if you tuned in, tapped in, if you're paying attention, if this is a person you know, you will have inclinations. You will have intuitive nudges that will say, okay, now you can intervene in this way. Okay, when I find about inappropriate statements like, don't worry about it. Okay, sometimes that's avoidance. Okay, just, be happy. That's an avoidance response, because sometimes things can be so terrible that you just can't be happy. That's why the scripture says, it never says for you to be happy, but it says in whatever state you're in, whatever mental state you're in, get to the place of a level of contentment for then. Don't become complacent. Don't say, this is my lot in life. But be present to what you're feeling. Be able to put a label on the emotion you are feeling at that time. We avoid emotions, okay? Give people space to talk about it. Sometimes you go through things and you want to talk about it, and people will just tell you, get on with it, okay? But some things you can't get on because you maybe haven't expressed it. So sometimes when a person is, make space for people to vent, make space for people to, sometimes when we in the frame of conversation of always being positive or being careful what we say, it's like sometimes I'll get in a conversation with Cheryl and I have to say to her, I'm just saying, and we have to give people the opportunity to just say what they're feeling. Don't mean they're running that program just to state what has happened. Don't be so quick. Like I'll let clients, for the most part, I give them one good session to talk about what's going on. But I do make space for it to come up again. But I'm listening for, what are you doing about it? What steps are you taking? It's okay. So if you just run in that same situation without any expectations of how you want things to be or any change in that conversation, then what you're doing is that what we call the plasticity paradox. Just like if you run a positive mindset, it'll affect you. If you run a negative mindset, it'll affect you. So there's a paradox. You got to know the frequency upon which you are saying something. How frequently are you saying it in this way? Are you saying it from a place that there's no change, you're not expecting change, and so you're wiring yourself to be pessimistic around that situation? So a lot of times people use these quotes like, don't worry, be happy. They use affirmations. They do manifestation work. And sometimes you're doing manifestation work when you should not be doing manifestation work or recreating work. You should be right now in the work of, it is what it is. And it's okay to be there for a moment. But many times we are looking to avoid the pain of an emotional state. So when you're using these terms, when you're encouraging people to be positive, you got to be careful that you're not superimposing your own stuff. Like, you don't want to deal with the possibility of pain. So we think in positive thinking that if we just think positive, we're going to avoid. No, you can think positive all you want. All it'll do is help you be able to move through it with more resiliency, because there's a possibility that your positivity has put you in a place of more readily being pessimistic. So no matter what the doctor says, you're more pessimistic, but you don't want to also use positive thinking prematurely, or you're not at a level where you are running through the paradigm of positive thinking. So example, you just learned about New Thought or positive thinking, and you get a diagnosis, and up until this day, you've been, believing in the doctor, getting all the shots, taking all the pills, following the course of action that your doctor has given you. So you have a level of trust in that. Then the doctor says, well, I see this showed up in the x-ray and you have this. And so automatically, to avoid the reality of I have whatever diagnosis it is, and you don't want to go through the course of treatment, or you know that the survey says these people who have this usually have this length of life. So you begin to grasp at straws. Then you run into somebody who runs the program of positivity, and you think, if I can do what they do, then you begin to have false hopes because you're not there yet. You got to know where you are. You got to know your level of maturity. You got to be okay with where you are, but you can also say there's a better way than this. I'm not up to going through all of that. So what can I do? Maybe I can change my diet. I can change the things I'm ingesting. I can change the way I'm thinking. Now, it may take time. Okay, so you have to know what you're up against. So I tell people to start learning how to work these principles of divine health, divine healing with little things like if you get a headache, like we do it with a paper cut. When we get a paper cut, we don't go to the ER. We don't start paying a lot of attention to it. At the moment of it happening, we pay attention to it. You know, if the blood is coming through from your finger, you'll clean it off and you'll tape it up, or, you know, put a Band-Aid on it, and you go on about your business. And before you know it, because you go about your business, because you know that that paper cut, the body is naturally has a natural healing program that's going to take care of that. And so you don't worry about it, you know. And we had to learn that as kids, your mama would put peroxide on it, put a little alcohol in it, can't forget the alcohol, and then she'll wrap it up with some ointment and put a Band-Aid on it and say, go play. You know, you didn't go outside and sit there and wait for it to heal. Other things caught your attention, and before you know it, you don't even remember when it healed. You don't remember when the Band-Aid fell off. And so that's the same thing that it's a process of learning how to do that. Now, the biggest issue I have with toxic positivity is timing. People have a big sign of toxic positivity is bad timing. So those of us who are on this call, we have to be mindful. We are in a place of working a program that allows for us to move through life in a more positive way, in a more pessimistic way. But be mindful, the people you bump into are not where you are. You were once where they were in some cases. So have a level of compassion, and you got to operate with a level of ethicalness. Okay, meet them where they are. If they're saying negative things, let them have that for the moment. But after you come alongside of them, then you can say, I've kind of observed something. Can I share? I observed that you appear to be very pessimistic, and I understand the situation you're going through, but there's some things you perhaps can do. So making little baby steps with individuals. So I'm just kind of introducing you to this week because positive thinking is a big part of what this ministry is all about. But it's not, so if you don't understand that we're more than making statements of positivity or talking about holding a frequency, there's something else behind that. And some of you all have been with me for a long time, so you've had similar conversations. But for those who are coming alongside in this new season, particularly of the ministry, I need to make space for you to know that there's some dangers to being overly positive in an unnatural way. Okay, so it's like you're groping with straws. So we have to learn how to balance that out. So what I'm going to do is this Monday, I'm going to do a deeper dive. That's tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. You'll get an email. I'm going to deal with some more things like positive paradox. I'm going to deal with avoiding toxic positive paralysis. I'm going to deal with avoiding emotions that show up that we oftentimes will lean into positive patterns that it may not be appropriate for us to do that. We're going to look at timing and how timing is everything. So I'm going to go a little deeper into the whole concept of plasticity. We're going to talk about some of the things that you should become familiar with, situations, and how to handle those situations. So that's kind of what I wanted to share with you this morning. We are starting the conversation in regards to positive thinking. Don't be guilty of toxic positive thinking. Because people see you coming, just like you don't like to see that person coming who always got negativity. Sometimes people are not ready for your positivity. Sometimes you got to know how to turn it down. Don't be so concerned. Don't be so loud that you can't hear what other people are experiencing. So you got to have a balance. You know, when you look at this image here, you see that there's a person who is sad, and you can see the 3 dark clouds, and you can see that person who has just stars shooting everywhere. Okay. And so we all, in the cycle of life, we all vacillate back and forth. Some of us stay stuck in an emotional state longer than others. But as you grow and learn how to use the principles that I'm talking about, how to stay inside of being optimistic, and how to use positive thinking in the right way. Just like we learn to use electricity. You know, if you don't know how to use electricity, it can kill you. But if you use it properly, it can really light up your life. It can really be that energizer force. And so we got to learn these things. So when the person is in a situation, sometimes we don't want to allow them to complain. They're not really complaining. Sometimes complaining is when you are doing it over and over and there's no action steps being alluded to or not open to. Then complaining is just rehearsing what is. Then I'll call a person on that at the appropriate time. But when you are sharing what is going on and you have a level of hope inside of that, or you're expressing a new possibility, then I know how to work with you. Then you may be ready for some of the tools that we use in New Thought or in positive psychology. So that's important. Okay, so let me open up and see I'm gonna stop my screen share here. And we're going to look and see if there's any questions this morning. But before I stop my screen share, I'm going to just go back to, if you're with us this morning and you have found this information of any usefulness or value in the short time we've been together, take a moment now. So there's an ask. So one of the things we have to learn, we have not because we ask not. And sometimes we don't ask people. We don't ask because we're maybe pessimistic that people don't give, but I make it my business to make the ask. And sometimes the ask is general. And sometimes it's specific, like this morning. This is a specific ask. Recently, we started the Boots on the Ground, the place of possibility here in St. Louis, and I'm not comfortable with making the ask of people I don't know. So the individuals who show up in the room, I don't want them to think that it's all about what they can give. I want them to come and experience what they can receive. And the only way I can do that is by either use my own personal resources, or those who are part of my partnerships are willing to sow a seed to help to offset the cost. The cost right now is $75 a week to do that. I've taken care of it for this month, just believing that I have partners who will come alongside, so that way, at least for the first 2 or 3 months, I don't even have to make an appeal to those who show up. So that money thing don't get in the way. They show up and say, wow, I get a lot of value, and it's not driven by money. But we know that money makes the world go round, or the things that we can use money to do makes the world go round. So if you are part of this ministry, or if you've engaged me at this moment and you find that there's been value in what I've shared, consider sowing a seed into this ministry. And you can do it in a variety of ways. You can do it by text to give, Cash App, PayPal. Just going out to oasisspiritualcenter.com and poke around out there, go over to the giving tab. And when you get to the giving tab, you'll find the different platforms you can use to actually sow into this ministry. So that's all I have to say about that. So wow, I see a lot of stuff going on over here in the chat. I couldn't see it. So Martin says, when I have some unexpected pain as I reflect on what is happening, I like reading Louise Hay's book. Yes, You Can Heal Your Life, to see what she has discovered as the probable cause so I can adjust my thoughts. And I love that because it's, you have the book. You have the situation, you're not being forced, but you're being inquisitive to say, okay, what could be behind this? And a lot of times we miss that. We so quick to go and get the antidote, or go and get the shot, or we go so quick to go and take the pill, or we're so quick to pray a prayer, when sometimes we need to be in here. We need to be, okay, this is what's showing up. It's okay. Don't make me less than because I'm showing up this morning with symptoms of what they will call a cold. I got a sore throat. Where's it coming from? Where's this manifesting in my physical body? See, it's how we frame everything. But I tell people, don't become what you're diagnosed. Don't say, okay, I'm a manic depressive. Don't say I have cancer. No, you are experiencing cancer in this organ or in this container, but you don't have. When you have, it means you take ownership. You own that thing. Now, people say it's a play on words. Words are powerful because words form your thinking. So that's really important. So that's a great book. I encourage everybody who's doing the personal work to have a copy of it. You can heal your life. And matter of fact, online, there is a website that if you have a certain malady showing up in you can type it in and then you'll get that same information. But I encourage you to get that book. You never like to fake it till you make it. Yeah, so here's the balance. The fake it till you make it only is appropriate if you're doing the things towards making it. Sometimes people just will fake it. They'll look a certain way, but they're not doing the work that is accompanied with it. They'll look like they're wealthy, but they are not taking on the mindset of a wealthy person. They're still squandering what they have. They're not making proper investments. They are overspending, or they are hoarding because they have a mindset of poverty. So we got to balance that out. So showing up how you want to be as if it is already happened is not faking it. That person is saying to themselves, this is how I'm going to look when it happens. So I look in that and I'm doing the work to maintain the frequency of that thing. So you have to know there's a paradox to all of these things. So I understand exactly where you are. People are faking it till they're making it, and they're not doing anything other than the image they're projecting. They are not doing the mental work. So you got to do the mental work. That is so key. Awesome. So is there anything else? Any hands up? Myrna, I can totally agree. I started reprogramming my subconscious mind every day with a grateful, healthy, wealthy, and wise. Yes, I am grateful, healthy, wealthy, and wise. Even when people are being negative around me, I hear my subconscious mind within me say it back to me. And even when you're going through something that may be contrary, you have a contrast showing up, you still make that statement. And you're going to kill the little man that'll show up and say, no, you're not, because you're holding it, but you also are dealing with, if something continues to show up in my life, I'm not just going to make these statements, but I'm going to ask, why is this thing showing up in the way that is contrary to what I want to experience? So I have a couple people here. I have Courtney and Minister Felicity. So I'm going to start with your hand was up here to be up first. Felicity, you have the mic.
Hi, I just wanted to say one application with the toxic positivity that I, was meaningful to me was in learning how to really connect on the inside with what needed to be prayed for, because I realized how I, was being oriented to prayer. People would just say something and you'd say, okay, I'll pray for you. Do you even know what you should pray for about that? When I was thinking about Jesus, when he asked the guy, do you want to be well? Or what can I do for you? And it's well, he's blind. He wants to see. Well, that's not obvious. The important thing is the agreement. Do we agree with what it is that you want? And sometimes people want other things. You're assuming what's the deepest desire. Or when I've prayed for people and God told me they want to go home, they don't want to be here anymore. Things like that, it is toxic to just assume what another person wants or what you should pray for them or things like that, or what God would want out of the situation, what's their highest and greatest good. So it's really wonderful when you get out of assumption with those things,
Yes.
and just because that is just like a positive quote, toxic positive frame of mind instead of the reality of what's actually going to be best right now.
Mhm. Toxic religious activity, toxic spirituality. The scripture tells us, we go back to the Bible and it says, will thou be made whole? I ask you, do you want to be whole? Some people, I'm gonna tell you, there's a lot of people making money in misery because they have this story. Everybody wants to, you look back over the 80s and 90s, people make a lot of money exposing their stories. Talking about how they made it. And so you have to know sometimes everybody's not going to make it. And some people have to be okay with this is my lot in life. So we have to be careful of the shame that comes with a lot of times people don't share what they're going through because those who are spiritual giants will really inflict shame on them because they may say, all you need to do is pray or all you need to do is fast. Something must be wrong. Like Job, his friends. So we have to make space by saying, will thou? What does that person want? And then the scripture tells us, lay hands on no man suddenly. So that's the same thing as don't even pray for somebody suddenly. And then if you gotta pray, have a generic prayer. And the generic prayer that I always have when I don't have a specific word for someone is, may God's highest and greatest good be made manifest in that person's life. I'm not practicing any kind of witchcraft when you do that. But when you impose a direct prayer on someone, you are sometimes you're operating, you're violating unless you have their approval and clarity of what it is they want. Sometimes people are not ready for total healing. So that's something to think about. Thanks for sharing that. Awesome. Excellent. Good. Minister Courtney, you have the mic.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing extremely well.
Wonderful. I was thinking about just the process of going through different things, different trials and tribulations, as people say, or contrast. I think it's a better word. And sometimes what we perceive as complaining is just them clearing. So sometimes people have to acknowledge where they are so that they can move on to the next thing. Your body, your mind, your being will give you signals that something needs to be dealt with, something needs to be acknowledged, something needs to be cleared so that you can alter your thinking and make room for more positive thoughts. Because as you said, the positive, the toxic positivity, I think is more of it's kind of selfish if you really want to know my opinion, because sometimes we, and I'm guilty of doing this before, right. You know what I'm saying? We want to feel better about that person's situation. So we're going to enforce our desire for betterment, on them when they may not be in a place of feeling or being better. They just may have to sit where they are, acknowledge where they are, give voice and respect to where they are right now so that they can move on to better feelings, better thoughts, and true positivity. So that's kind of how I feel about that. And there's just so much on this subject that can be expressed. But I found a quote this morning and I really want to share it. It's by Marcus Garvey and it reads, "Let the sky and God be our limit and eternity our measurement. There is no height to which we cannot climb by using the active intelligence of our minds. Mind creates, and as much as we desire in nature, we can have through the creation of our own minds."
And see, that's such a great quote by Marcus Garvey, and most people don't know that Marcus Garvey was for lack of a better term, a New Thought teacher. He operated. Look at all this man was doing at the turn of the century, you know, when we're coming out of a heavy period of enslavement, he was able to he started a shipping line to take those who were us who wanted to go back to Africa. He was an international figure. He led the movement of Black power, Black positivity. Before he wasn't part of the NAACP, he preceded that. He was really all about liberating of Black folks, and I am about the liberating of the mental capacity of Black folks. We have had too many things superimposed on us, and thank you, Courtney, for bringing that up. Superimposed on us that don't fit us, don't work for us. So we need to take responsibility for who we are, whose we are, and what we desire to become. So positive thinking is key. But you got to have the right balance. You got to be more optimistic versus pessimistic. You got to know that it's only human at time to express what you're going through, and it's not a level of complaining. But then you also have to be sensitive to know when you are stuck in complaining, and now you need to do the work. So getting the clarity can become complaining. But we want to be able to differentiate between the two. And the timing is everything. Give people an opportunity to be where they are. And so I got to prepare myself to get to the other side of town. I'm speaking at the Center for Divine Love this morning, kind of introducing them to this message. I only have 15, 20 minutes to present. So I just give them a structure to think about, but I hope they will join me on, like you only got a little bit of what you need to get, what would be beneficial to you. Join me on Monday night. So we'll go deeper into this thing. So I look around here. I don't see any other questions. Let me see if I have anything.